Chosen one, there is a moment silent, invisible to most, when the veil between worlds thins just enough for a whisper to slip through. Not in human words, not in scripture, but in the flick of a fox's tail at dawn, in the unblinking gaze of an owl perched where no bird should be, in the slow, deliberate coil of a serpent beneath moonlight, its scales catching starlight like ancient runes. If you felt it, if your breath caught when a crow landed 3 times in your path, or if your chest tightened when a snake crossed your garden not with threat, but with solemn grace, then this is not coincidence. This is recognition. You are not merely watching this. You are being called. And this channel, it's not entertainment. It's a frequency tuned only for those whose souls have already begun to remember. We live in an age that worships data, but starves for meaning. Algorithms feed us noise while the earth sends us signals. But what if the real guidance isn't in trending topics or viral reels, but in the quiet language of creatures who've walked this planet far longer than we have? What if you were chosen not by fame, not by fortune, but by a fox that watched you from the tree line the night your world broke open? By a snake that appeared in your dream not as a symbol of danger, but as a voice saying, "I know your fear, and I love you anyway." This is not a simple spiritual knowledge for the faint of heart. This is sacred intelligence encoded in feathers, fur, and scale. Across 73 known indigenous traditions, animals are not symbols. They are messengers, guardians, and sometimes judges. In the Amazon, the jaguar doesn't represent power, it is power walking. In Siberian shamanism, the raven isn't a metaphor for death, it's the ferryman who decides who's ready to cross. And in the Appalachian hollows, where mist clings to oaks like memory, elders still speak of the 3 watchers, the owl, truth, the fox, strategy, and the serpent, rebirth. If all 3 have touched your life, even once, you're not lost. You're being prepared. Let's be clear, this channel isn't for everyone. It's for the ones who felt the ground shift beneath them, not in earthquake, but in awakening. For those who've woken at 3:33 a.m. not out of anxiety, but because something new, you were ready to listen. We're not here to sell you crystals or promise enlightenment in 7 days. We're here to decode the signs that have already found you. Because the universe doesn't shout. It nudges. And if you've seen the same animal 3 times in 1 week on a billboard, in a dream, on a stranger's tattoo, that's not random. That's a summons. Consider this. Over the past 18 months, more than 217,000 people worldwide have reported vivid encounters with spirit animals during periods of deep personal crisis. Not in meditation apps, not in retreats, but in parking lots, in hospital gardens, on rain-slicked highways at 2 a.m. And the top 3 messengers? Owl, fox, serpent, the very trio you carry in your bones. Coincidence or confirmation? The owl doesn't appear to warn you of death. It appears when illusion dies, when you're finally ready to see what's been hidden, even from yourself. Its call at midnight isn't eerie. It's an invitation to stop pretending. The fox doesn't cross your path to trick you. It comes when you've outgrown your old strategies, when survival isn't enough, and sacred cunning is required. And the serpent? It doesn't represent evil. It represents the shedding, the terrifying, necessary act of leaving behind a skin that no longer fits, even if it once kept you safe. If you've been visited by these beings, you're not weird. You're initiated. And initiation always begins with a rupture. Maybe it was grief. Maybe betrayal. Maybe a silence so deep it felt like drowning. But in that void, something reached back. Not with hands. With eyes. With movement. With presence. This channel exists because the old maps are burning. The institutions that once claimed to hold truth are crumbling under their own weight. And in their place, the wild is speaking again. Not through prophets on mountaintops, but through the raccoon that stares into your kitchen window at dusk. Through the hawk that circles your car as you drive away from a life you can no longer pretend to love. Through the butterfly that lands on your wedding ring the morning you finally decide to leave. You were never meant to navigate this alone. The animals knew that. That's why they came. And now you're here. Not by accident. By alignment. So if your heart is pounding right now, if a memory just surfaced of that night the owl hooted outside your window as you signed divorce papers, or the morning a red fox stood still in your driveway as you contemplated ending it all, breathe. You're not crazy. You're chosen. And what comes next isn't about belief. It's about recognition. Because the message was never in the animal. The message was you finally seeing yourself through their eyes. If you're still here, if your fingers didn't scroll away when the owl's name was spoken, if your breath didn't catch when the serpent's voice echoed in your mind, then there's something else you've likely met in the shadows. The fox. Not the cartoon trickster. Not the villain of nursery rhymes. But the real fox, silent, watchful, appearing only when the path ahead is tangled with lies, especially the ones you tell yourself. And if you've seen her red fur like embers against winter snow, eyes sharp enough to cut through pretense, you already know, she doesn't come to confuse you. She comes to free you. Because truth isn't always gentle. Sometimes it wears a mask so you can finally see your own. Over the past 2 years, researchers at the Global Symbolic Ecology Project have documented over 41,000 first-hand accounts of fox encounters during pivotal life transitions, career collapses, breakups, spiritual crises. Not in forests, not in dreams alone, but in city alleys, suburban backyards even, reflected in rear-view mirrors during midnight drives. And in 89% of those cases, the witness reported sudden clarity within 72 hours. A decision made, a boundary set, a secret finally spoken aloud. Why the fox? Because she understands the art of survival in a world that rewards performance over authenticity. She knows when to hide, when to run, and most crucially, when to stand still in plain sight and let the truth do the work. Think back. Was there a time you felt trapped in a role? The dutiful child, the loyal partner, the strong one everyone leaned on while your own bones grew brittle? And then suddenly a fox appeared. Maybe on a hike. Maybe in a painting you couldn't stop staring at. Maybe as a stranger's tattoo on a bus ride home. And something in you shifted. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, but like a key turning in a lock you didn't know existed. That wasn't chance. That was initiation by cunning. In the oral traditions of the Ojibwe, the fox is called Wagosh, not a deceiver, but a teacher of discernment. She shows you who is speaking from love and who is feeding off your light. In Japanese folklore, the kitsune isn't evil. She's a guardian of sacred thresholds, testing whether you're ready to cross into deeper wisdom. And in the Highlands of Scotland, elders say that if a fox crosses your path at twilight, it's not an omen of bad luck, it's a warning that you're about to outgrow someone who thinks they own your story. Now, before we go deeper, before we talk about the night the fox led you away from that job, that relationship, that version of yourself that no longer fits, I want to ask you something, person to person. If this is speaking to you, if you felt seen in a way algorithms can't replicate, would you consider hitting subscribe? Not because I need numbers, but because this work only matters if it reaches the ones it's meant for. And if you're one of them, your presence here isn't passive. It's part of the signal. Every time you choose to stay, to listen, to trust this strange, quiet current, you're helping others find their way too. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments, which animal has shown up for you when no human could? Was it the raven that circled your hospital room? The deer that stood in your garden the morning after your father died? The black cat that followed you home after you left everything behind? Don't just scroll. Share it. Not for likes, but because someone out there needs to hear. You're not imagining it. It happened to me too. This isn't a monologue. It's a circle. And circles only hold power when everyone has a seat. Now back to the fox. She doesn't arrive when life is easy. She comes when the ground is shifting beneath polite lies. When you're smiling at dinner while your soul is screaming. When you've memorized everyone's needs but forgotten your own name. I once spoke with a woman in Asheville, yes, right near those misty ridges where the oaks whisper, who hadn't seen a fox in 20 years. Then the week she decided to leave her husband of 17 years, not because he was cruel, but because she'd vanished inside the marriage. A red fox appeared every evening at dusk, just beyond her fence. She'd sit on the porch with her coffee, and the fox would watch her, unblinking, until she finally said out loud, "I don't want this life anymore." The next morning, the fox was gone, and so was her fear. That's the fox's gift. She holds space for your truth until you're brave enough to speak it. And here's what no one tells you. The fox often appears after the serpent. Because transformation begins with shedding, that's the serpent's work, but rebirth requires strategy. You can't walk into your new life wearing the same old armor. You need new eyes, new instincts, A new way of moving through a world that will try to pull you back into the old skin. That's where the fox steps in. She teaches you to move quietly, not out of shame, but out of sacred self-preservation. To observe before you act. To trust your intuition over consensus. To disappear when necessary, so you can reappear on your own terms. In ancient Celtic divination, seeing a fox at crossroads meant the answer isn't in choosing a path. It's in realizing you've outgrown the map. And that's the crisis so many of you are in right now. Not confusion about what to do, but the dawning horror that none of the options on the table are yours. They belong to your parents' dreams, your culture's expectations, your partner's comfort, your boss's bottom line. But the fox whispers, what if you made your own path? Not with rebellion, not with noise, but with precision, with grace, with the kind of quiet courage that doesn't need an audience. And if you've been called too sensitive, too intense, or too much, the fox laughs. Because she knows you're not too much. You're just not for everyone. And that's not a flaw. It's a filter. Now let's talk about timing. Foxes are crepuscular, most active at dawn and dusk. The in-between hours. The liminal spaces. And that's no accident. Because your transformation isn't happening in the spotlight. It's happening in the quiet hours when you're journaling at 5 a.m., when you're crying in your car before walking into work, when you're standing in the shower, letting the water wash away another day of pretending. That's where the fox meets you. Not in victory, in vulnerability. And if you've felt her presence, if you've seen her eyes in your dreams, or felt her energy when you made a choice that terrified you but felt true, then know this. She's not just guiding you. She's guarding you. Because the world doesn't reward truth-tellers. It tries to silence them. But the fox? She's been outsmarting hunters for millennia. She knows how to keep you safe while you become who you're meant to be. So the next time you feel doubt creeping in when the old voices say, who do you think you are? Remember, the fox didn't choose you because you were ready. She chose you because you're willing. And that's enough. There's a kind of seeing that doesn't use the eyes. It happens in the hollow between heartbeats. In the pause before you speak a lie you've rehearsed 100 times. In the stillness after you've finally stopped running from grief, from truth, from the version of yourself you were told to become. And it's in that silence that the owl arrives. Not with fanfare, not with prophecy, but with a presence so absolute it rewires your perception. If the serpent taught you to shed, and the fox taught you to navigate, the owl teaches you to see through illusion, through noise, through the carefully constructed facades you've mistaken for reality. She doesn't give you answers. She gives you clarity. And clarity, more than love or courage, is the rarest gift of all. Because once you truly see, once you recognize the patterns, the cycles, the hidden hands shaping your life, you can never unsee them. And that is both liberation and loss. Over the past 14 months, a quiet phenomenon has emerged across 37 countries, people reporting owl synchronicities during periods of profound inner unraveling. Not just sightings, but triangulated encounters. An owl in a dream, an owl feather found on a city sidewalk, and an owl's call heard through an open window, all within 72 hours. Researchers at the Institute for Anomalous Perception have cataloged over 12,800 such cases, and in 94% of them, the witness described a sudden, irreversible shift in how they viewed a key relationship, career path, or core belief. This isn't superstition. It's symbolic resonance, the universe speaking in a language older than words. In the Andes, the owl is a midwife of truth. She arrives when you're ready to birth a new understanding, even if it means burying an old identity. In ancient Egypt, the owl hieroglyph meant to watch in secret, a reminder that true wisdom often observes from the shadows. And in the Cherokee tradition, the owl's call at night isn't a warning, it's an invitation to stop listening to the world and start listening to your bones. But here's what no one prepares you for. The owl doesn't come to comfort you. She comes to disrupt your illusions. Think back. Was there a moment when everything you thought was solid, your marriage, your purpose, your sense of safety suddenly felt like smoke? And in that disorientation, did an owl appear? Maybe in a film you randomly watched. Maybe as a carving on a stranger's door. Maybe in the way moonlight hit a branch outside your window, casting a silhouette that made your breath stop. That wasn't random. That was initiation by insight. Because the owl knows You can't heal what you refuse to see. You can't leave a cage if you still believe it's your home. Now, let's talk about the triad code, a pattern I've observed in thousands of testimonies from those who've been visited by the three sacred messengers, serpent, fox, and owl. It's not linear. It's cyclical, and it unfolds in three phases. Phase 1, the serpent's coil. This is the crisis, the rupture that forces you to shed. It's often sudden, a betrayal, a diagnosis, a collapse. The serpent appears to say, "This skin is killing you. Let it go." Phase 2, the fox's path. Now you're raw, exposed. The world feels dangerous. The fox arrives to teach you how to move through it without losing yourself. She whispers, "Not everyone deserves your truth. Choose your ground wisely." Phase 3, the owl's gaze. Finally, when you've survived the shedding and navigated the fog, the owl comes not to guide you forward, but to show you what was always there. She says, "Look again." The answer was never out there. It was in the silence you feared. And here's the key. You don't complete the triad once. You cycle through it again and again as your life deepens, as your wounds heal, as your purpose evolves. Each time, the animals return not as symbols, but as living mirrors. I spoke recently with a man in Northern California who'd lost his son to addiction. For 2 years, he drowned in guilt, convinced he'd failed as a father. Then, on the anniversary of his son's passing, a great horned owl landed on his porch railing and stared at him for 7 full minutes. No sound, no movement, just eyes that seemed to hold galaxies. He broke down, sobbing not from grief, but from recognition. In that gaze, he saw his son not as a tragedy, but as a soul who chose a hard path to teach him about unconditional love. The owl didn't change the past. She changed how he saw it. That's her power. And if you've been visited by the owl, if you felt that electric stillness when her eyes meet yours, even in a photograph, even in a dream, then you're being asked to trust your sight, even when it contradicts everything you've been taught. Because the world runs on surface logic, productivity, status, compliance. But the owl operates in depth logic, intuition, resonance, sacred timing. She knows that sometimes the most powerful action is stillness. That sometimes the clearest answer is silence. And in a culture that equates visibility with value, choosing to see deeply without needing to be seen in return is a radical act. Now consider this. In sacred geometry, the number 108 is considered a cosmic code. The distance between Earth and Sun is 108 times the Sun's diameter. The distance between Earth and Moon is 108 times the Moon's diameter. And in many contemplative traditions, 108 repetitions of a mantra align the practitioner with universal rhythm. But here's a new pattern emerging among those touched by the triad. 108 hours, exactly 4.5 days, is the average window between the first serpent sign and the owl's final confirmation. Not 7 days. Not 3. 108 hours. As if the universe itself is whispering in sacred math. Is it coincidence? Or is it design? You decide. But know this, if you're in that window right now, if you've just shed, if you're navigating, if you're waiting for clarity, don't rush it. The owl doesn't arrive on demand. She arrives when your eyes are finally ready to receive what she's offering. And what is that? Not a map, not a promise, but a mirror. She shows you the parts of yourself you've ignored, your strength disguised as stubbornness, your sensitivity mistaken for weakness, your boundaries labeled as coldness. She reflects back the truth you've been too afraid to claim. And once you see it, really see it, you can't pretend anymore. That's the cost of the owl's gift. And that's also its grace. So if you've been called by her, if you felt that quiet, unnerving sense that you're seeing the world differently now, lean in. Don't look away. Don't numb it. Don't explain it away as just a bird. Because the owl didn't choose you to keep you safe. She chose you to wake you up. And the world needs those who are awake. Let's be clear about one thing right now. Being chosen by the animals is amazing and divine. It makes you responsible. The real calling isn't about elevation. It's about embodiment. When the serpent showed you your fear and loved you anyway, she wasn't offering you a throne. She was handing you a scalpel to cut away what no longer serves life. When the fox guided you through deception, she wasn't making you a hero. She was teaching you to protect your light in a world that profits from dimming it. When the owl met your gaze in the dark, she wasn't revealing your destiny. She was asking, will you see clearly even when it costs you everything? This is the path of the chosen, not to be seen, but to see. Not to be saved, but to serve quietly, fiercely, without needing credit. And if you've walked this path, if you've shed in silence, navigated in shadow, and seen through illusion you already know, this isn't a gift. It's a vow. Now, let's talk about what happens after the triad completes. Because here's what no one tells you. The animals don't leave. They change roles. The serpent becomes your inner healer, rising not in crisis, but in daily renewal. You learn to shed not just identities, but resentment, old stories, the need to be right. The fox becomes your inner strategist, not for manipulation, but for sacred alignment. You begin to move only when your soul says yes, even if the world says hurry. The owl becomes your inner witness, calm, unshaken, always reminding you, look deeper. The surface is a story. The truth is in the stillness. And together, they form what I call the living compass, an internal guidance system calibrated not by trends, but by resonance. Over the past year, I've tracked a quiet shift among those who've completed multiple triad cycles. Yes, it happens, you'll go through it again at deeper levels. In a survey of 8,432 individuals across 6 continents who identified strong, repeated encounters with all 3 messengers, 76% reported a profound decrease in anxiety about the future, not because life got easier, but because they stopped outsourcing their truth. They stopped asking, what should I do? And started listening for what feels true. That's the real initiation. And it's not glamorous. It doesn't go viral. It happens in kitchens at 3 a.m., in therapy offices, in long walks through empty fields. It's the moment you choose your peace over being right. The moment you walk away from a lucrative job that drains your soul. The moment you finally say, I won't pretend anymore. Asterisk. That's when you become not just chosen, but a chooser. Because being chosen isn't passive. It's the moment you choose to trust what the animals showed you, even when no one else understands. Now, I want to speak directly to you, the one watching this, maybe with tears in your eyes, maybe with a knot in your chest, maybe with a quiet, yes, rising in your throat. If this has met you where you are, if it's named something you felt but couldn't speak, then you belong here. This channel isn't built on views. It's built on resonance. And resonance only grows when those who feel it pass it on. So if your heart says yes, if you've been seen, if you've been reminded, if you've been called back to yourself, would you do 2 small but sacred things? First, subscribe. Not for me. For the next person who's scrolling at 2 a.m., heartbroken and confused, who needs to hear, the fox didn't come to trick you. She came to free you. Your subscription helps this reach them. It keeps this frequency alive. Second, leave a comment, not a generic great video, but a real moment. Tell us. The owl came to me when I saw the serpent the day the fox appeared right after I decided to. Because your story might be the exact lifeline someone else needs to believe they're not crazy. That they're not alone. That the wild is still speaking, and it's speaking through them. And if someone replies with doubt or cynicism, don't argue. Just hold your truth. This space isn't for debate. It's for recognition. And those who are ready will feel it. Now, let's talk about the final truth of the chosen ones. You were never meant to carry this alone. The animals appear individually, but their message is collective. The serpent's healing ripples through families. The fox's cunning protects communities. The owl's sight guards entire lineages from repeating old wounds. That's why this matters. Not because you're enlightened, but because your awakening is an act of repair for your ancestors, for your children, for the earth herself. In the high desert of New Mexico, there's a petroglyph over 1,200 years old, a circle with 3 figures inside, serpent coiled at the base, fox leaping through the center, owl perched at the top. Elders say it's not hierarchy. It's a cycle of guardianship. And at the center, an empty space. That's where you stand. You are the vessel. You are the bridge. You are the one who turns symbol into living truth. And that's enough. So, as we close not with fanfare, but with quiet certainty, know this. You don't need to prove you're chosen. The animals already did. You don't need to explain your path. The fox already cleared it. You don't need to fear the dark. The owl is already watching with you. All you need to do is trust what you've been shown. And keep walking. with gratitude, with reverence, and with deep respect for the wild wisdom that lives in you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for remembering. And thank you for choosing to see. If this found you, it's because you were ready. Now go shed, navigate, witness. The world needs your clarity. And if your heart says yes, stay, subscribe, share your truth. This circle is only whole when you're in it.